Economist here. So we got one of you already here. Thank you so much for hanging out, waiting. What did I do today? So today I talked with Owen Benjamin. That was a great conversation. And then I did a video, and then I went and got an alternator for the S10 because the S10 alternator went out. And I'm not much of a mechanic. I know how to replace, parts and change the oil and do stuff like that. But monkeying around trying to get that alternator out of that S10 was a little frustrating for me today, but I got it done. It took me about, I don't know, 2 hours or so to uh, to work that thing out of there, but it's up and running again, and that's the important part. Like, so many people out there don't know how to work on their vehicles or just don't take the time to do it. And there is so much money that can be saved by working on your own vehicles, especially something as simple as changing the alternator out. I mean, the alternator was expensive. It seemed like when I was a kid, you could go and pick up an alternator for, your Chevy pickup for like $50 or something. Now they're 150 plus the cord charge and, the serpentine belt. It ended up being close to like 25% of what I paid for the entire vehicle. Like, I paid $1,200 for this car, and I think the total bill came to like 250 or something on this on these parts. But anyway, I'm glad to have the truck running again, so that's nice. All right, 50 of you up in here. All right, 58. So the Federal Reserve, listening to them talk about what it is that their strategy is. And this is really just kind of blowing me away because I did a video probably about 7 months ago. I'm going to leave a link down in the description for you guys talking about this exact thing, saying that the Federal Reserve and the lifting of interest rates is not going to fix the problems that they are experiencing, because the problems that we had experienced came from a supply chain breakdown, and they're trying to deal with the demand issue. And so, yes, supply and demand, these are the issues that have been taking place, and all the money printer that had gone into the economy went into the people's hands, and this is where all the demand came from. Totally true. Now, the other part of it is the severe supply chain breakdown that had taken place because everybody was told to go home. And we know the supply chain breakdown was quite extreme when we saw so many people, or not many people, many freighters parked outside of the ports of LA. This was one of the biggest indicators that we had a huge supply chain breakdown taking place throughout the rest of the nation, getting this stuff to flow through the country. Now, the Federal Reserve, and that was just one example of many that are even still taking place with like the train issue and stuff. Now, what I said back then is that if the Federal Reserve is going to try and fix this inflation scenario by cutting the demand, it's not going to work, because what they are looking for is help from the supply side. We had a supply and demand imbalance that took place, right? Supply dropped dramatically because of all the severing of the supply chain, and demand rose incredibly high because of all the money printer that go burr, right? So now, as the money has been spent and it's starting to come down, the supply side of things that they were really hoping for didn't pick up. And so now we still have this imbalance that has taken place. What they were really hoping for is that the supply would then come up to meet the demand, and they really wouldn't have to do much at all, and we would not have the inflation scenario that we are experiencing. But it didn't happen. The supply came up to just a little area, came up just a little ways, and we still have this big area to fill in order to meet that balance again. Now, the Federal Reserve is trying to cut that demand to meet this lesser supply that is now within the country, and it's not going to work very well, because how much demand can you really cut before the people are just like, hey, I can't take any more of this. My way of life is starting to diminish, right? And that's really where the problem comes in, is because people don't want their way of life to diminish. Right? They're okay with maybe not experiencing the extras in their life, but they don't want it to diminish. They don't want to have to take any cuts or hits. So coming from the supply side, in order to fix this problem, you need investment. You need people to actually invest in trucks, invest in warehouses, invest in these things in order to get the supply to start to move through the country again. Well, but what happened? As the investment started to take place in trucking, because of the over expansion that was taking place, or the overwhelming consumer demand, that was it. Because of the overwhelming consumer demand, all these people started investing into the trucking companies, right? And get more trucks, more drivers, do all the stuff to get this freight to move around the country. But now what are we experiencing from it, right? All these people who had invested in these trucking companies are now having trucking companies fail. Same thing with the warehouses. As they were building up these warehouses to try and deal with this oversupply of inventory that was coming in, I said it then. I said, you're going to find a time in the future where just-in-time delivery starts to beat the domestic supply stockpiles that are there, because stockpiling inventory costs money. Just-in-time delivery is super efficient as far as pricing goes, and when it comes down to the bottom line, profits everything. So when the just-in-time delivery starts to basically take over all the warehouses and their overstock inventory that has taken place, all those warehouses, all that inventory, all that stuff is going to become a burden. And you're going to find where warehouses start to fail or go bankrupt, or, just end up being lesser of an investment demand. And I think we're starting to see that happen now. Like I said, I got links down in the description for all that stuff. Going into the future, what I see coming from here is that every time the Federal Reserve says anything about the backing off of lifting of interest rates, the hopium that is going to rip through the market is going to be quite extreme. Everybody's going to love the idea of the Federal Reserve backing away from the lifting of interest rates. And it's not necessarily backing away from the lifting, it's backing away from the lifting it as much. Like, they're going to continue to lift interest rates going into the future, but as long as they don't do it as much, the people are going to love that, and they're going to eat that up, and you're going to see market rallies all the way up until the day they actually lift the rates, and then the markets will tank. But people love the idea that the Fed is going to back away from the aggressive rate hiking idea, but they're not backing away from rate hikes. They're just backing away from the aggressive. Not even aggressive, like even a 0.5 percentage point is still aggressive. So I don't know. To me, it's still pain from here on in. I don't see any hope coming from that. Did I get a super chat up there just a minute ago? I did. Hey, thank you, John Midas, for the $10. Really appreciate that. Thanks for constantly posting, Simon. Hey, well, thank you guys for being here. It seems that the YouTube algorithm is messing with the channel a little bit, and that happens. So I don't really stress it. There's purges that take place, and a lot of times people will tell me, it's just like, hey, man, I don't know what's going on, but I got unsubscribed, or I'm not getting notifications, or something like that. Those things happen. I try not to look too deep into it. I just kind of assume that it's something that's going on with the YouTube and the YouTube algorithm, and that things will change again. But it seems that lately, I don't know if it's just not the notifications are going out or what, but it certainly seems that there's a slowdown in the views that I'm getting here on the channel. But then again, that could just be my content too. So all right, let's see here. It's a good idea to still DCA, dollar cost average. Absolutely. I dollar cost average into everything. I tried doing day trading kind of stuff and being market timer or investor, like stockbroker investor. I don't do very good at that. I do much better at dollar cost averaging, where I just put the money in there and I just kind of forget about it and just kind of keep putting pieces, little bits in. Nice thing about dollar cost averaging is that you don't really notice the money disappears. You put $1,500 in and it's just like, oh my gosh, where did all that go? But you put $50 in or $100 in, and it hurts at the moment, when you first do it, but then a couple of days later, you kind of forget about it. You don't worry about it. And dollar cost averaging, definitely the way to go. Hey, all-nighter, thank you very much for the $2, man. That's really cool of you. These pull people into the stream. Thanks, Simon. Hey, well, thank you very much, man. I mean, I know that YouTube wants to make the money just as much as I do, so they probably want to make it more than I do. I like earning it, but I just like the process more than the actual, doing of it. But I know YouTube wants to get the videos out there too, so like I said, maybe it's my content. All right. The Fed will fly the plane all the way to the scene of the crash. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of people keep saying that the Federal Reserve is going to crash the system. And I think to myself, why would they do that? They have people paying taxes. They have people in debt. They have almost everybody in debt. That's an awesome system for them. Why would they screw that up? They don't want to lose that. And so when people say the Fed is going to totally crash the system, no, they're not. That would be okay, well, I guess we're done, boys. We're all out of business. Like they wouldn't do that. They want to stay in business. They want to keep everybody in debt and everybody paying, right? And that's really where they want everybody. Hey, Jose, right on, man. Thank you. Simon, one of the few Oregonian YouTubers. Hey, I appreciate that, man. All right. Best tip. I go to local flea market each week and buy non-perishable food to store. Food is an inflation hedge. Yeah, I agree. I was wandering around the store with my wife today, just doing a little bit of grocery shopping, and I was amazed by some of the prices that I have been seeing. I mean, it's obvious, like the food prices are definitely moving up. And that was one of the things that I had warned about quite a while ago, was that you're going to see the food prices moving up dramatically. Food and energy, those are the two things that I said that I excluded out of my like inflation scenario, because those are two things that are definitely going to go up in price as we move into the future. It was like TVs and furniture, and eventually it's going to be cars and probably houses and all the other stuff that's going along with it. But food and energy is going to continue to go up, and it's going to get really painful for people outside of the United States. I mean, you're going to hear stories of like famine and just really bad times, especially if the Federal Reserve sticks to it after the inflation comes down, because this is really where I don't think a lot of people are anticipating, is that the inflation is going to come down. Everybody's going to point at it saying, okay, look, the 2% target has been achieved, and the Fed is going to say, yeah, but we're going to keep interest rates elevated for some more time, right? Because they are going for a 2% interest or 2% inflation over time. And he reiterated that many times in that last speech Jerome Powell uh, reiterated that in his last speech that he gave. Owen Benjamin is full of knowledge. Can't wait to listen to the talk. Dude, yeah, it was so much. Who said that? Rory, man, it was so much fun talking with Owen Benjamin today. With Owen, he's such a cool guy. Like, I've never really like spent any kind of significant time listening to his podcast. I listened to a little bit of it before, when I had emailed him, and we had set up the time to do the interview. So I listened to some of his podcasts. I thought, okay, well, I kind of get the gist here. And when I talked with him, man, what a cool dude. I'm looking forward to seeing the comments from after we post that video, to see what you guys have to think. But he is. I mean, he's very much like-minded, like I am. Even some of the things that he was talking about, like when he got canceled, like when they're canceling his Twitter and his YouTube or whatever, like a lot of people would have like a lot of resent towards that. It was just like, screw YouTube for doing that. And he was like, hey, it's their platform. They make up the rules, whatever. I broke them, and now I have to figure out what I got to do on my. Like, he doesn't hold resent towards any of those people out there for that stuff, or at least he didn't when he was speaking with me. And I found that, like, that's like, well, it's really mature for one, to have that kind of attitude about it, but to know that you're not going to let anybody else take you down. Right? I mean, they can go ahead and take me off of whatever and whatever platforms. I'm still going to go out and do what I got to do. And that's what Owen Benjamin did. I mean, he's a badass. He's cool. Yeah. Never seen you when dark out. Yeah, well, it's Oregon, and it's getting like, we're coming to the winter solstice soon, but pretty much it is dark from about, I don't know, 4:30 until about 8 o'clock, 7:30 or so, 4:30 to 7:30. It'll be pretty much night out. And that's kind of a bummer. But then on the opposite side of that, during the summertime, I mean, shoot, it'll be light out. I've seen it light all the way out till like almost 10 o'clock, like 9:30, 10 o'clock. And then the sun will be rising at like at 4 o'clock in the morning. So it's like, it's sun all day. Damn, do you ever sleep? No. That was something I was talking to my wife about the other day. No, I don't sleep. I really don't. I will be lucky. Like when I get home from work, I'll eat dinner, or sometimes I'll crash out just before dinner, but usually I'll sleep for like a half an hour when I first get home. It's just kind of like knock out for a little bit. And then I will fall asleep again somewhere between 8:30, 9 o'clock is usually like when I kind of fall asleep for bed. And then I am lucky if I am not up before 3 a.m. Like if I can make it to 3, that's like a really good night. But most of the time I'm usually up by like 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I'll read and do articles or, figure out stuff, do comments, emails, stuff like that from 2 to about 6 when I go to work. So no, I don't sleep. I really don't. And then like sometimes I'll get on a roll where I really don't sleep very much, like just getting 2 or 3 hours a night. And then like on my weekends, I'll end up crashing out for like 14 hours. I'll just lay in bed for like half the day and not get out of bed or whatever. It's a horrible way of going about it. Early mornings, solo time, nice. Yeah, absolutely. I found like it's usually best if I could stay in bed till like 5. That's like awesome if I could be there, because that hour between like say 5 and 6 when nobody's up, nobody's doing anything yet, and it's quiet and it's just me and coffee and articles, like that is my favorite time. My mind spins the best. Everything's like I can absorb articles better at that time than just about any time else in the day. So, all right, moving on. I slept once back in 1988. Yeah, how was that, man? That must have been nice. Woke up and Bush was president. Not gonna happen again. Yeah, I don't blame you there. All right, great channel. Thanks, man. Uh, that sleep pattern, the grind doesn't stop. That's my sleep pattern. The grind doesn't stop. Yeah. The commute, driving is probably the most peaceful part of the workday. Yeah, I agree. I had a job where I was working like about an hour and a half away from where I lived. And I didn't really like the drive there so much because it was morning time and trying to get to work, whatever. But the drive home, I really enjoyed. It was nice, quiet, peaceful. By the time I got to the house, I was ready to be home. A lot of people don't realize that I'm more of an introvert than an extrovert, and coming out on YouTube and stuff like that, it's like people are like, man, you're an extroverted type of person, but I'm really not. I'm very introvert. Like I really enjoy my downtime, my quiet time, my just solo time, all that stuff. Like I really enjoy that stuff. But during the day, like I go hard with it, right? 8 hours a day doing sales, doing YouTube, doing all that stuff. But as soon as it all turns off, boom, I'm on my own. Like I'm like I could sit at the corner of my bed in the dark with nobody talking to me for hours, and that would be just fine. Hello from Kentucky. Sir Paul Krugman, Keynesian, yeah, Keynes. Krugman was one of the experts that informed the public not to worry about inflation persisting last year. Well, yeah, but he was right too. But the thing is like you got to have the reasonings why you saw it, why there wouldn't be the inflation persisting for the years to come. And now, what I saw it come from was the same thing that I had seen in lumber, and that was what I was anticipating was the same thing that I had seen take place in lumber. I mean, if inflation, if the dollar value has fallen, right, and that's what everybody sees. It's like this is a dollar value destruction thing that has taken place. Then where should lumber be? Where should the price of lumber be with inflation? Should it be at the 400 per thousand, or should it be at 600 per thousand, or if you took inflation out, would it be at like 150 or 200 per thousand? Where should lumber be? Because I follow lumber, right? And I can't see where the inflation has ran into lumber anymore. Now, it is a supply and demand issue, and there's plenty of supply versus the demand out there, and I get that part of it because, well, I sell 2x4s for a living, so I get the demand side of things, and I see the production side of it too. And we just did a great interview with Keta from Madison's Lumber Report, who pretty much talks to every single mill out there to get her analytic report so that she could sell that. So I mean, I have a pretty good clue of what's going on inside of the lumber industry, and I'm pretty good at the demand side of it as well. So where does the inflation when it came to lumber? Like, I don't see it. I don't know where all that money printing had landed in lumber like everybody said it did when it was at 1,700 per thousand. I mean, I was one of the few people who was arguing against that, saying, no, this isn't inflation, this is a supply issue. So here we are right now. We ain't got lumber sky high. We don't really have a whole lot of inflation that's come out of the market yet, but yet lumber's back down at its normal price. I also looked at 15-pound felt, which is not something that a lot of people even know exists out there, but it's a paper for building. Like it's a vapor barrier, and it's used put on the walls before you side. This stuff I've been selling it like my entire life, and for the last like 5, 6, 7 years, the stuff has been like $35 a roll, 32, $35 a roll. Right now, I am selling 15-pound felt for $35 a roll. I'm selling 2x4s for $4.50. I'm selling like a lot of building materials at the price that I had once sold them for. So did it come down? Well, it come down in some areas. It's starting to. You're starting to see it. Has it happened where the supply has opened up? Nope, not yet. I mean, you can still see the congestion taking place. Like, I mean, just on the East Coast alone, we're starting to find where they have ramped up their ports as far as the congestion that's going on there dramatically. The train issue is still taking place. Like, we got trucking issues that are happening still throughout the nation, and now we're going to have some real issues with it if a bunch of these trucking companies go out of business. So until I see the supply side of things like functioning normal, I'm yeah, the inflation, transitory inflation is going to take some time. Like, I don't know what to say about it, but it's all going to end up like lumber. That's what it's going to end up being. Not everything, food and fuel won't, right? That's the one thing I'm excluding out of it. But TVs and couches and all that other stuff, I mean, that's going to get really cheap, and comparatively. Give us some time, and then that's all going to flip, and we're going to run into real shortages, and then you're going to see the real hell break loose. I mean, we haven't even experienced what it is that's going to, like, we got a taste of how bad it's going to get. Just a small taste. You think about the manufacturing slowdown that's happening. I mean, that's really where I think the title of this video starts to kick in, is because the Federal Reserve does not give an environment, right? Not that they should be doing anything as far as giving. Like, I don't give a shit what the Federal Reserve does. In fact, and the Fed, I don't care. But what I guess I'm getting at is that if you are trying to create a situation in which that you want supply to meet the demand that's out there, then you need to give an environment in which that people would want to bring that supply to the economy. And when you are telling basically the people who are going to supply, oh, hey, by the way, you people who supply and manufacture and distribute and all that other stuff, guess what we're doing? We're going to hurt the consumer, the person, your customer. We're going to give them some pain. You like that? You want to work in that kind of environment? You want to invest into something like that? That'd be fun, right? You want to do that? No, of course not. Right? So the Federal Reserve is basically shooting themselves in the foot, asking for the supply side to help them out, but then telling them that they're going to kill their customer. It doesn't work. It ain't going to work like that, and it's going to fail. So what ends up happening from this is that you're going to find where people are not going to be investing into the idea of manufacturing into a recession. I mean, who would do that? And then you can also see it happening already over in China. I mean, of course, I haven't read today what's going on over there, but they had some pretty big issues with the COVID lockdowns and their slowdown in manufacturing that's happening there. Well, that manufactured stuff isn't going to come to the United States if it's not manufactured. And we're a consumer-based economy. So we have to have that stuff come into the economy or into our country in order for us to buy it and sell it and create the economy within our own. So it's bad. It's not going to end well. This is, I mean, I wish I could put it on a timeline, but you can't really, because nobody knows how far out this is really going to take. But the real shortages are coming. I mean, I hope people are getting prepared for it, because they think like this is coming to an end. It feels like it's coming to an end, but it's not. It's going to get worse. And what's going to really happen is that food production. This is really where I feel that it's going to get really hard for a lot of people to deal with, is because food production is going to ramp up in this country as the price of food goes up. When that food production, when the investment goes into it, those people who have invested into those farms and stuff are anticipating that they are going to get a high return on their food products, except that they all jumped in at the same time and overproduced the food. The price of food drops and these farms go out of business. It's the same thing that happened with trucking, right? There was a huge demand for trucking. If there's a huge demand for food, like a huge demand for trucking. What happened to trucking? Trucking investment moved up. Everybody started buying new trucks, hiring people, trying to facilitate the needs of the overwhelming consumer demand that was taking place out there, right? Because people were paying a lot of money for freight. Got to jump into the game while the money is good. Well, what happens when the demand for freight went away? So did the money, and so do the companies that operate these trucks. So the same thing will happen in food. Same thing will happen in a lot of places out there. I mean, we saw it happen in lumber. I mean, that happened. British Columbia area has tons of mills up there that shut down right as the COVID pandemic was kicking in. They didn't open back up. That's it. They're done. Right. They're transferring from the British Columbia area down to the southern part of the United States. I mean, you just keep an eye on these things. They're happening. Did I get another super chat up there? Hey, thank you, Matthew Weaver, for the $10. Very nice, you man. Michael Barr, Vice Chair of the Federal Reserve, and Rosa Rios, 43rd Treasurer, was on the board of Ripple. What role does XRP play in the new quantum financial system, and who claims the 50 bill escrow? Thanks. Okay. I know. Okay. I'm not trying to deny XRP as being the central bank digital currency that's going to be used. That's cool. And I mean, I hear a lot of people tell me about it. I have yet, and I've asked for this. I've asked many times for it because I don't really want to hear. I mean, I want to know the information. Don't get me wrong. I want to hear and know the information of XRP and how it's going to be used as a central bank digital currency or whatever. What I'm looking for is a Fed document that says it. Something, like anything at all, like something that comes from the Federal Reserve, fedreserve.com, right? Or .gov or whatever the hell it says. I want something from there that says XRP on it. Anything, right? And I don't even care if it's like saying they're going to use it or not going to use it. I just want them to mention it. If they would mention it, then I would change my tune. But I can't find that, and I can't find anybody to send me anything on it. So until I see that, I'm going to stick to this. I'm going to say, okay, I don't know, right? That XRP is, I'm not going to say that's going to be the next one because I can't see where the Federal Reserve has said that. Now, I have found where the Federal Reserve has talked about stable coins and the regulation of stable coins, and they've in more than one document and from many speeches from different Fed officials. So stable coins I've heard of, right? And so it seems to me that the Federal Reserve is definitely interested in those stable coins, whether or not they're legit or not, I don't know. But this is where I'm kind of getting at, is like, this is the information that I want to see in order for me to make those kind of predictions. Is like, I got to see it from the Federal Reserve. And again, like, I don't trust the Fed. I don't care whether or not they're making, I mean, I guess I do care, but it's not up to me to care whether or not they're making the right decisions or not. What it's up to me is to figure out what their strategy is, and so I can conduct my behavior in an appropriate fashion. That's it. Like, I mean, I'm not here to try and say the Fed should do or shouldn't do or is going to, like, well, I guess I do say what they're going to do, but I'm not here to try and say, like, this is right or wrong, right? That's not me. What I'm trying to do is trying to figure out what it is that their strategy is so I can figure out my strategy. And I don't see where they say XRP anywhere, not once. And I would love for them to do it, I mean, not love for them to do it, but I would like to see that so I can, start taking on that strategy within the Fed, because I don't see it. I see stable coins, but I don't see XRP in there. All right, Peter Schiff for Fed chairman. Time to, like, I don't think Peter Schiff would make a great Fed chair. I think his decisions within the Federal Reserve, I mean, unless you wanted to end the Fed, like if you were, I want to bring somebody in who's going to end the Fed immediately, then yeah, it would be Peter Schiff. In fact, people have asked me before, it was just like, who do you want to vote for president? And I'm like, I don't like the system. Like, I don't like the way it's conducted. I don't like the people within it. I don't want to vote for somebody and then pretend like they're like going to do something that I'm approving of, because none of these people follow the Constitution. They don't think like I do. They don't behave in the way that I would expect them to, as far as like being in the confines of the Constitution. So as far as I'm concerned, if you brought up a candidate that's going to crash the system, I would vote for that person. Whoever's going to crash the system the fastest, that's the person I would want to vote for, because then we can at least start anew and start something. I don't know if it's better or different or what, but to be honest, I just don't care. So I'm not not really interested in crashing the system, and I'm not really interested in these dipshits that are trying to say that they're here trying to help us. I'm just not interested in any of that. I am interested in the Federal Reserve, their monetary policies, and how it is that I can conduct my own strategies. That I am interested in. Peter Schiff would take the position to let the free market take over. Well, you can't really let the free market take over because we don't have a free market type based society. Like, when you have a Federal Reserve central bank system that's printing up money and putting that, none of that is free market. So there is no free market to even like allow to take over. It would have to be a complete crash of the system and then a reestablishment of a new monetary policies system, everything about it. And that would have to, if according to Peter Schiff's style, would not have a central bank. It would have, well, I mean, I guess it could have a central bank, but it would not have a fiat currency base. It would have a sound money like gold or something of that nature. I mean, and if it's Peter Schiff, I would assume it would be gold. Yeah. All right. Who we got here? The infamous NYC. Thank you so much for the $5. Very nice of you. Best investment moving forward will be land. Grow your own food, store water, and you can live on it and lower your housing costs, rent it or work it. Yeah, and I agree with that. Like land for self-sufficiency. That's another thing that I talked with Owen about. I mean, Owen raises a bunch of animals. He had like a bunch of goats and cows and chickens and I mean, he does the whole thing, the whole homesteading thing. But that's something that like that I agree with. Like the ownership of land is definitely a good move. They're not, especially in a good location, because they're not going to make any more of it. And it's something that doesn't necessarily have like this historical like dropping of value, right? It usually goes up. So buying into land is, in my opinion, is probably a pretty decent way to go, unless it's the only thing you have. Because then if you ever run into an emergency and you need some money, you can't just sell off like a little piece of your land. I mean, I guess you could, but for the most part, you can't really just sell off like, a few $100s worth of your land or $1,000 worth of your land. You have to take out some kind of equity loan, and then you're back into borrowing and dealing with the system again. So if you have plenty of money and other means and resources and stuff, then yeah, absolutely, land is the way to go. But if you don't have that other stuff going on, then and land is the only thing you have, then I mean, I guess if you were self-sufficient on it, then that would be cool. But other than that, I think there would be other ways to go about it to be a little bit more efficient with your time and money. Hey, right on. Thank you so much, Lumberjack Landlord, for the $10. Very cool of you. Appreciate all you do for us. Had a great time during our interview. Thanks to all your UE viewers that had great input. Yeah, well, thank you very much for coming on to the show, Matthew. I really appreciate it. It was one of the funnest interviews that I had done. I mean, it went on for like an hour and a half, and it didn't feel like an hour. It kind of dawned on me how long we had actually been talking for, and great information stuff, and I really like the stories of how you get started. Like that's the ticket. Like everybody says, it's just like, wow, they're really lucky to be in this position, but they don't really hear about how hard it was to actually get started, or what it was that happened that got people started. And this is really where, like, I think the stories need to be told. A lot of people don't know, like, what was behind the idea, to start this business, or to start the YouTube channel, or to buy that first house. There's always some kind of inspirational story behind it, and I love hearing those things, because that's really what a lot of people need to hear in order to like say, yeah, man, that's my story too, that's what I needed in my life, boom, and then they start moving too. So I appreciate that stuff. All right. Must be nice to have a Toyota Corolla. Oh, it is. It must be nice. That's funny. It is nice to have a Toyota Corolla. It's nice to have running vehicles. Period. They're not fancy, and the other day, like when the truck broke down, it wasn't that big of a deal. Like it didn't. Like when you got a $35,000 truck and it doesn't start, you're pissed, right? Especially if you're making payments on it. Now you're making payments on a car that doesn't work. Oh, that really drives you crazy. But you got a $1,200 truck and the alternator goes out on it, and you just well, whatever. It's just like it happens. You kind of expect it anyway, and then you get it fixed and you feel pretty good about it. So having like old junky vehicles, like I can't see myself driving a brand new car. Like, I mean, I can. I mean, I see myself driving a car because I really want to do it and enjoy it for the 10 minutes that I'm driving to work or whatever it is. But as far as like for life, just like having something of convenience, having something that's cheap, it's just a mode of transportation. Like, insurance is cheap, gas is cheap, it gets me where I need to go. What else do you really need? And then I think about like, by not having a fancy car, I can do other things with my family that I really enjoy, like, going to the zoo or to museums or something like that. So the money that I save by not having a new car, I get to really enjoy the experiences with my family with. So, it's worth it to me. I love having these old cars. And then if somebody runs into it, you don't really care, right? Like somebody sideswiped this thing. I even had it on video, my reaction from it. And it's like I was upset for like literally like 30 seconds over it. All right. Wow, there's so many comments up in here. I really appreciate it. So we got 300 viewers right now and only 100 likes. Go out there and hit that like button. We'll get a few more people up in here and it'll start, the YouTube will pick it up and start spreading it around for us. All right. Thank you, Lumberjack Landlord, for another $10. I agree. Time flew by. Next time we just need to make it shorter and you and I can just hang out. It was truly a great time. You have great viewers. Yeah, thank you, Matthew, man. I agree. Like I mean, I know I'm sure everybody's pretty biased to their own channels as far as their YouTube channels go, and I've said it before, but I honestly think that I have the best viewers on YouTube when it comes to the economics thing. The comment section of my channel is pure gold, and I love it. Like, I don't know what I would do without YouTube, without you guys, because it's like it means so much to me. It means like it's everything for me. Outside of outside of my family or maybe my job or something, it's just like I think about, YouTube and the things that we got going on here pretty much all the time. All right, without YouTube, I can think of something. What's going on with crypto billionaires dying over the last week? That's funny about like the whole cryptocurrency thing. Like, I don't know if I've ever really gotten like super excited over cryptocurrencies. Maybe in the earlier days or something like that, but I've never been the type or feel like I've been the type of person who's just like, you got to get into the crypto market and you're going to be a millionaire when you do. It's just like, I've never really had that thought. And in fact, I've never really put money towards cryptocurrencies that I wasn't expecting to lose anyway. But I really enjoy the game, the space, and the idea behind the blockchain and the distributed ledgers and some of the projects that are coming from it. All these people that I hear getting burned, they were all greedy. Every last one of them was greedy people. Like, they were all thinking that they were going to capitalize on, some big crypto movement or something like that. And not one of them took the concern to actually do any kind of real legitimate research into what they were doing or putting their money towards. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's their own fault. Like, that's not the exchange or FTX or anybody else's. It's your own fault for losing your money. I mean, I don't blame Big Vern over at Cripsy for stealing my Dogecoin. I mean, I do blame him, but I mean, because he took it. But it's not like, it's just like he's the reason why my life is all messed up. No, I mean, it's just like that was my fault for giving it to him, not his. He took it because he was the thief. I mean, I should have known better. And I think that's the way like most people should behave when it comes to all their money and all their finances or anything they got going on in their life in general, right? I mean, never trust anybody with anything ever. I mean, that's it. Just like, I mean, I hate to say it like that, but that's really the truth of it all. I mean, it's just like, if you put your money towards an exchange, I wouldn't trust it. I would be like, I'm putting it towards you, but I'm not trusting you. And if I lose it, that's my fault. But hopefully I make a bunch of money doing this. If you take that kind of attitude, then you won't be as like, heartbroken by things. Cryptocurrencies are gonna continue to do just fine. The exchanges are, I don't know, like those things, they're gonna, after this, they're all gonna start getting regulated, and then you're gonna end up like with some issues from that as well. But I mean, I think the cryptocurrencies themselves, like Bitcoin and a lot of the other, cryptocurrencies out there, I don't see anything that's changed about those. Like the protocol still works. There's nothing iffy about that. It's the behaviors that people do with those coins that is the problem, right? And that's really where I think, like, things like FTX is going to start bringing in a lot more regulations, and I actually welcome it. Go ahead, bring it on in. Temporarily to get new rental properties. All right. Beanie Baby still outperforming Bitcoin. Really? Does anybody actually still collect Beanie Babies? Trust me, or say, trust as much as you're willing to lose. And there you go. That's it, all nighter. We are witnessing a massive expansion of space. Example, the Space Force. Do the operate in inner, outer, or digital? I'm not sure on that one. Home buyers are at fault for buying more house than they could afford leading up to the '08 crash. Well, okay, that's true, but it wasn't the home buyer's fault, right? Like, I mean, yeah, it is because they're not smart, but then it's not the person who is borrowing the money, it's the person who's lending them the money that says, "Man, I should have been a little bit smarter about who I'm lending my money towards," right? But they weren't. They were just giving the money to anybody who wanted to borrow money, and then they created a bunch of toxic assets out of this money or out of these signatures that belonged to people who were basically not going to pay. And then they sold these toxic assets, these mortgage-backed securities, off as grade A investments. So it wasn't like somebody sitting out there going, "Man, I'm buying way more house than I can afford," and that's what screwed it all up. I mean, yeah, that was part of it, but it wasn't their planning on doing that. It was the screwed up financial system allowing these mortgage-backed securities to even be created with such toxic assets in them. That was the problem back in '08. I mean, you can't blame an individual for borrowing as much money they can to buy the biggest house they could possibly get. That is the human nature, right? That's just what they are going to do. Nobody thinks logically like that stuff, right? Everybody takes out the biggest loan for the biggest house that they can possibly get. And to blame somebody for that is wrong. You can blame the financial market for it because they created the loans in which that those people had signed. Like, they have the piece of paper that says, "Here, sign this," right? And so they created that part of it. If it wasn't for that, then we wouldn't have had the toxic assets to begin with. All right. Also, what about the taxes on these McMansions? British pound. I'm not sure what the question was referring to on that, but about how much they cost. Yeah, and I can imagine that. Like, there's some, like, I was looking at some houses that had like tax payments that are almost as much as like a house payment was. I'm like, Jesus, pay tax and make a house payment for your taxes. It's ridiculous. All right, how stocked is your company at work with lumber? I'm in the plumbing, and we have tons of overstock, and things starting to get slow after this week. No, not many deliveries. Our yard is stocked fine. There are a few things that we are missing right now. One of those things is treated decking, 2x6 deck boards, just like the treated 2x6s without the incisor marks. I can get 8-footers and I can get 20-footers, but like the 10s, 12s, 16s, all the common ones in between, all that stuff I can't seem to get right now. And it's been that way for like almost 2 months. It's going on some time. And 2x10s, 2x12s, some of the wider lengths, those things have sometimes come up as a hit and miss as far as filling in, some of the units there. But other than that, I am not overstocked on a whole lot. Some siding, some fiber cement siding. We got quite a bit of that sitting in the yard now because we had, ordered, 2 truckloads of that stuff. But other than that, I don't think that we really have an oversupply of anything. Um, Nothing major anyway. And everything that I'm finding out there as far as availability outside of those 2 items that I had talked about, I have not found shortages coming up yet. I'm not expecting them, and I see the lead times shortening up. So as far as I can tell, the lumber itself is going to be questionable. Plywood is going to be questionable because there's not allocations, but curtailments taking place right now within the mills, both for lumber and plywood. And talking with Keta, sounds to me like this is probably going to be the case going into the new year. We're going to talk again in February, and probably by February, a lot of this inventory depletion is probably going to be peaking out right about then, and we're going to see some really tight inventory. And at the same time, there's going to be like, you got to understand, there's going to be pressure to build at some point, even with the higher interest rates. Now, yeah, the builders have backed off, but at some point, they're going to want to come back in. That's their job. This is how they make money. And so, yeah, they backed off now because of the uncertainty that's taken place. But at some point, the pressure is just going to get to them, and they're going to have to go back in there and start building again. Because how else are you going to eat, right? You got to make money. If you're a builder, you got to build. So at that time, when we get to that February mark, this is where a lot of people are going to have to start taking that thought: do I buy or not? Are we going into this building season? Are we going to need our material? And at February is probably when the demand is going to start picking up as they start getting prepped up for that building season. So I don't know what's going to happen after that, but I would not hesitate if you need to buy lumber now or you have a project that's coming up in the next few weeks. I mean, this is it. This lumber's not going to get much lower than this. And like I said, with the inventory tightening up and the, certain depletions of inventory that I'm seeing that are just not becoming available, it's only a matter of time before we start seeing the prices skyrocket again. And I don't know where they will go or to what extent. I guess that would really depend on how much demand it's going to be from the home builders at that point. And that is so much uncertainty right there. Like it's no way you could call it. You have to get closer to that time to see where the sentiment from the builders are, in order to really understand it. Did that all make sense? I don't know. All right. Um, Local government becomes dependent on real estate taxes on McMansions. Oh, yeah. And there is no incentive to let market correct. Yeah, that's true. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome, man. No problem. All right. 307 people, still 305, Hey, ladies. Hey. All right. Something about the science books. All right. Mixing text and comments. Let's see here. Go back down. Lobster mac and cheese. Man, I love that. We got, we don't have lobster over here on the Pacific Northwest. We have Dungeness crab. But Dungeness crab mac and cheese, yeah, I'm in that. I'm all about that. I guess there won't be a real estate crash after all. I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be a real estate crash. I could definitely see some corrections, and probably some major corrections in some really hot areas. Like I mean, my local area where I live has just exploded in price values. Like, it's just stupid, ridiculous prices. And so I could see where like my particular area is going to come down quite a bit. But a buddy of mine moved to Missouri and he was talking about how the prices really haven't moved all that much. And like places like that, I'm not thinking there's going to be, if they didn't move that much and they're not going to crash that much. I can see like some places probably won't feel anything at all, but incredibly hot markets, they're going to feel the volatility from that. And there's going to be some people who are going to get burned from it. But as far as like the cross the board major crash of the housing market from all corners, I don't see it yet. I mean, I'm not trying to deny it. I'm just saying I'm looking for the evidence of it and I want to see the evidence. People tell me, "Oh, it's going to be worse than the '08 financial crisis." Okay, tell me how. Like give me the reasons. I mean, list off all the things that I try to do to say these are the reasons why I would see it or expect it, or why the reasons why I'm not. I mean, you give me the info. Hey, Matthew, I think you are spot on, Simon, on correction, not crash. Yeah, and I mean, you would know. I mean, you got a hell of a lot more properties than I do, and would definitely feel it a lot more. But it's just me from the outside perspective trying to look in. Like, not like I have a house, but I'm not really interested in selling the house or doing anything with it. I just plan on living there. So to me, like, I do want to get into real estate. Like I want to invest, and like I want to invest in all kinds of stuff, and real estate would definitely be one of them. And so like I would want, in my mind, like as an investment thought, would want to see a housing market crash. Like I would want that. I would want to be in a position prepared to deal with a housing market crash as far as buying into that investment. So I mean, if somebody was like, you just churned your tune because you own a house, no, it's not. Like, I want to see a housing market crash, not to hurt people, but to be in the best position in order to get the best deal that I can. So I'm looking for it. Like, I want to see that, and I want to have the evidence that says this is coming so that I can be prepared for it. I don't see it. Like, I can't find it. And I'm still wanting to invest in real estate. It's not, I don't need a crash to do it, but I don't see it. I'm just not finding it there. So, all right. What is that? Composite operator? Thank you very much for the 15. The commitment of traders report for grains looks very interesting. Commercial speculators are buying up wheat and corn futures. Food might become very expensive in 2023. I wouldn't doubt that. I it's gonna I don't want to dwell into the idea of what it's going to be like when the food shortages start to kick in, but it's going to be really bad. Like people flip out, like they can deal with all kinds of issues except for hunger. Hunger is something that people cannot deal with. They physically can't deal with it. I mean, you die, right? And once you start going hungry for a little bit, you just lose it mentally. You will do whatever it takes to get food, including killing people. Like it's just like it gets to the worst. The worst that you could possibly see come out of a human will happen when they go hungry. And it's coming, right? So, yeah. If the Fed gets their job losses, then maybe soon some housing correction, but we're ways away from that, it seems. Yeah, and shoot, I wish I had the chart to show you the foreclosure rate. Lumberjack Landlord talks about this, and he has the charts on his channel. You should go check it out. I'm sure he's probably just even in the most recent videos he's probably showing them, but he has a chart for foreclosures and the amount of foreclosures that are taking place right now comparatively from like the history. It's like there is no foreclosures happening. Like the uptick in foreclosures is so minute comparatively to like even like you take it back to like the '08 financial crisis and it's just horrible like how many are happening there. But even still, like the naturally occurring foreclosures that you would just anticipate happening within a normal functioning financial market, we are still like tiny amount of foreclosures that are actually occurring within within the housing market right now, within the mortgage market. So even if you were to double, triple, quadruple the foreclosures, it's still not going to be a painful experience when it comes to the prices of homes, like driving, causing a crash to happen. There's still a long ways to go on the amount of foreclosures needed. So in order to get those foreclosures to kick up, yes, you would have to have some massive unemployment, and then you would have to experience that unemployment for some time. I don't see it. Not yet. Now, is it coming? Probably, but it's not here yet. So we got to see it first in order to actually have it happen. Did I see Lumberjack up there again? Yeah, there it goes. People take stimmy dollars to buy cars with down payment. Couldn't do that on houses. If the Fed gets their job losses, then maybe some... Oh, we already talked about that. Okay. Let's see. Those guys are talking. In New Hampshire, we have 0.5% rental availability. There are people who are homeless 3 months a year because there are too many short-term rentals here. Plus, our minimum wage is $7.25. Egads! $7.25? Ooh. I don't really like Oregon for a lot of stuff, but they have like an $11 or $12 minimum wage up here. It's horrible. Like, I don't think there should be any minimum wage personally. I think they should abolish all minimum wage. But, people talk about how awesome it is to have like these high minimum wages and stuff like that. And I laugh so hard at that because there are plenty of employers out there who really can't afford to conduct their business paying people those high minimum wages, especially like here in Oregon. And so, really, what you end up having to do is hire the absolute best employee that you could possibly get because you're paying them a lot, right? I mean, it's $12 an hour or whatever for a minimum wage job. So, you have to hire the best person you can. And unfortunately, if you're in Oregon and you try to go get one of these minimum wage jobs that pay $12 an hour or $11 an hour or something, and you're just not that smart, like, you really the only thing you can do is like kind of sweep floors or maybe empty garbages or something because you just don't know, you just can't do anything else. Well, in Oregon, you're too stupid to work. So unfortunately, you just can't work here if you can't if you are not smart enough to at least earn $11 an hour for your employer, then you're too dumb to work in Oregon. It's just unfortunate for you, right? It's a horrible way to think about it, but that's the truth of the matter, right? There's plenty of people who would love to work, but they're not going to get a job because they're not smart enough to earn $11 an hour, right? Yeah. Oregon has good weed. Oregon has the best weed. All right. What are the odds of the Fed switching to central bank digital currency? What are the odds? 100%. I mean, if you're asking me what I think the Feds are guaranteed 100% to go into a central bank digital currency. I just couldn't tell you the timeline on it. I would assume that it's going to happen within, the next 5 years or something like that. But again, I think these things happen a hell of a lot faster than they really do. Like I get the information, I see it, and I'm like, oh man, this stuff is happening. We got to get moving. We got to do it now. But then really, it's a slow grind. I mean, the powers that be do not want to do anything fast. They want it slow and incremental and like slow and steady wins the race. If they try to shock the people, they get pissed and then they lose control of it all. So yeah, slow and steady for them to win. All right. Not that I want them to, but that's how they're going to do it. It's not a prediction. Yeah, it's very expensive. Let's see here. Dead on minimum wage. Yeah, I agreed. Okay, all the massholes moving up here. Central bank digital currency will be the end as we know it. I don't think so. I mean, we've already the end as we know it already happened a long time ago. I mean, when they FASB 56, where they said that they're going to show you numbers, but they're not the real numbers. It's just fake numbers. But don't worry, they're okay for investment purposes and stuff like that. I mean, between that Patriot Act, I don't know. There's all kinds of things that happened over the last year that it's already done. Like, the idea that we have a constitutional republic that only exists for people who are willing to defend the Constitution. I don't know anybody out there who's willing to do it. They say they are, but then they don't know what the Constitution is, and so they can't possibly vote for somebody who's going to protect the Constitution if they don't know what the Constitution is themselves. So I just don't like the end. I mean, central bank digital currency ain't going to change anything about the end as we know it. I mean, the end as we know it is already upon us. All right. If your business can't pay a living wage, where did that go? Then your business shouldn't exist. Okay. I mean, that's kind of a horrible way of looking about it. So you got a business, you would love to conduct your business. You could almost expand, but unfortunately you can't because the minimum wage is too high. So, oh well, I guess we shouldn't provide a service or anything else, right? Maybe there might be somebody out there that says, "Hey, I don't want the minimum wage. I want whatever it is that you're paying because I want to work for you regardless of how much you pay me." But you can't do that, right? Not legally. So, I don't know. None of that makes sense to me. Like I'm not trying to defend one way or the other on it. Like, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, people should be working a hell of a lot more than they do. I mean, 40 hours a work week is like half the amount of time that people should be putting in. And I just don't see where like we're going to have a successful like expansion into anything outside of like a government that is controlling of everything. If you could get the people to like understand for themselves, to understand the monetary policy, to be self-sufficient, to try and, be the type of person who does start businesses and hire people and stuff like that, then we would have a nation that would probably do much better. But nobody thinks like that. Like nobody does, and it's quite unfortunate. Yeah. All right. Congress gives itself. What does that say? Congress gives itself on hell of a minimum wage. Gives itself a hell of a minimum wage. Yeah. All right. Work smarter, not harder. That's it too. There's so many ways to make money out there. It's just like, I mean, especially nowadays. When before the internet, it was really difficult to make money. You actually had to go and find people to hire you and stuff like that. Now, like the internet provides you with all kinds of ways to make money. And, more people should do it. Uh, the opposite of progress is Congress. Okay. All right. I'm coming back as a lobbyist. Politicians work 40 hours a month. Yeah. All right. What cities do you think real estate is more overvalued? I mean, I don't know because I don't really study like the individual markets themselves. I mean, I think that would probably be a better question for lumberjack landlord on what cities themselves. I mean, I can just tell you that like Seattle, Portland, and LA are pretty heavy, but there's a lot of places all over the West Coast that are going to get hit pretty hard. You know, I would say like, you have to hit like all the ones that have that you heard about in the news, like, places like, from California, Oregon, Washington, Texas, Florida, these are all the places that everybody moved to and drove the prices way up. I'm not sure. Okay. I'm normally working about 90 hours a week to keep my business running. Yeah, yeah, and that ends up being for a business owner is that you end up working 90 hours a week. Um, a lot of people are just like, man, you're so lucky to be a business owner, being like, independent and just being your own business owner. You work a lot. You work the entire time you're awake, essentially. I mean, it's like there's no waking moment of your thoughts that doesn't have your business on mind. It's just the way it is. Um, but the benefit from that is that you are working independently from anybody else, and so that's a freedom that nobody else really has. So it's worth it. All right. Vegas is really being hit hard right now. Yeah, Vegas, I can imagine that. City people moved out and won't move back. It's so annoying. Yeah, give them some time. Once all the uncertainty is all over, it's going to take a while for it to happen. But once it does, conveniences are in the cities, and people like conveniences, and that's why they go to the cities. Until those, once if people are fearful or whatever, then yeah, they move away from that stuff. But at some point, they want to enjoy those conveniences again, and they'll move out of the country back to the city. The whole West Coast has been overvalued for decades. Kiyosaki, I see cannibalism in the big cities. No one knows how to grow food. Ooh, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's necessarily going to get to the cannibalism part, but man, that's kind of like it's scary to think about because I think about like cities like an island, and you have to have a constant stream of stuff going into those cities in order for those people to eat and live and survive or all the other stuff. Um, can you imagine, like, if all of a sudden the supply stopped moving into a city? Like, how long can a city survive without no supply going into it? Some cities might do a little bit better than others, but some have hours, maybe just a few hours to before they all hell starts breaking loose. Some of them might get a day or two out of it. Who knows? But without a steady supply going into them, what happens to the people then? What do they start doing? Well, they're going to start leaving the cities. Where do they go? Right? They start heading out to the country. So, yeah, not good times. Turn the lights off in the city and see what happens. Yeah. Welcome back, all-nighter hider. Call me Fast Eddie. Rack 'em up. Turn. Oh, we already read that one. All right. Watch the SCOTUS Brunson case on January 6th. Supreme Court of the United States Brunson case. Silver Dome. So, we have any more questions going on here? Let's see what's up here a little ways. All right, Thomas Sowell's great analogy on minimum wage. When he was young, going to the movies always had young kids who would greet you, walk you to your seat, fetch popcorn. They were learning responsibility. Yeah. It's amazing some of the changes that are happening now. Like, oh hey, thank you, Lumberjack Landlord. Appreciate that. $10. Top overvalued cities. 5, San Francisco. Or number 5 is San Francisco. Number 4 is Boise. Number 3 is Seattle. Number 2 is Vegas, and number 1 is Phoenix. Thank you very much, Lumberjack Landlord, for that. See, I told you guys you'd come up with that info. All right, I got my Costco bucket of mac and cheese. I'm good. Yeah, you're loaded, man. You're good to go. Ramen noodles. Love that stuff. All right. Hey, thank you very much, Infamous NYC, for the $5. You should read about the cannibalism in Jamestown in the 1600s. They tried communism and starved to the point they ate their young just to not work. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I couldn't tell you what it's going to be like as far as like I would imagine like nations outside of the United States are going to be in a hell of a lot worse shape than the United States is, but yeah. All right. John Fox, yo, Uneducated Economist, what's up? What is up, John? Simon, I'll be reading audiobook The Wealth of Nations, so I'll hold you to it. Aye. All right, man. Who's that? John Peterman. Okay. It's 900 pages, so what do we got this over the course of the year? Can I take a year to read this book? Because it's probably going to take me at least that to get through 900 pages. So if you're going to hold me to it, let's meet up again beginning of December next year. Moody in the house. All right. The way it's looking in white collar jobs are the ones that are going to be the most affected. Labor jobs are plentiful, but either no one is willing to take them yet or they don't have the skills. Yeah, and I could see that really being the case. Like, all these people, the great resignation, because all these people went up and found like these high speed jobs that they didn't think they would ever be able to achieve. And then it turns out those high speed jobs doesn't even really exist, and like they can't do them, and they don't know what they're doing, and they're going to end up getting fired from that. And since all these companies ended up hiring a bunch of people they didn't need, like I really think a lot of it came from like the zombie corporations. They gorged on this incredibly cheap debt, and you got to do something with it, so you expand, and part of expanding is hiring people. So these people got hired by these zombie corporations, and they're going to end up losing their jobs. They're going to get fired or laid off or whatever, and then they're going to have to go and find another job. And since they really didn't have any skills to begin with, they're going to have to go and take one of those like service jobs or something. How long that takes, I don't know, but at some point you're going to find that the layoffs that are happening within like the tech industries and stuff like that, you're going to find them moving into the service industry, and those lack of service workers, that's going to all come to an end. All right. All-nighter, I'm blessed. Bro, I'm blessed too. I'm halfway through my Wealth of Nations. You're halfway through it? Oh, man. So you're going to definitely beat us. All right. Only 30 hours audiobook. You can do it easy. Yeah, you're right. I love Wealth of Nations. All right, man. There's so many people. That is such a good book. It was funny because, like, I don't know, I read the first, like, I don't know, 20 pages or something of it, and I can tell that it's going to be a tough one to get through. It's definitely not like the most exciting book in the world for sure. All right, what is a zombie corporation? A zombie corporation is a corporation that never would exist if it wasn't for the fact that they're taking on ever increasing amounts of cheap debt, or just taking ever increasing amounts of debt. The moment that they can't afford to take on debt anymore, or the interest rates rise and they cannot take on that debt, then they start to fail. And it's not necessarily easy to pick out a zombie corporation that is going to be a failing corporation as much as it is to identify a zombie corporation that just exists. So zombie people exist all the time, and you can tell this by like how, like for example, I mean, do you know anybody in your life that has the new car, the new watch, the new house, the new stuff, has everything fancy in their life, but they live paycheck to paycheck, like they have nothing left over from it at all? That's a zombie person. The moment that they are not able to take out, like that credit card doesn't work anymore, their whole life becomes undone. Like everything starts to fall apart on them. That's just essentially what a zombie corporation is, just like that. I think of places like corporations like Evergrande over in China. Now, I wouldn't necessarily put them into like the zombie corporations like what I'm trying to describe as coming here, because those guys were like the largest property developer in the entire world with an insane amount of debt. Like they should have never have gotten that big. Um, but anyway, they did, so they were huge. And the moment that the interest rates churned and the Chinese government started to lift interest rates to try and reel in some of the irrational exuberance, that company failed and it started taking down all the rest of the property developers with it. So these zombie corporations, they exist just within the economy. I mean, people do, and people as well. We just don't know exactly like what point they get triggered into failure, right? Because we just know that they've been gorging on debt, they've expanded, and now the interest rates are rising, and that's going to be difficult if people aren't buying their product. So zombie corporations are going to become a problem, and they're already starting to rear their ugly heads. It's going to get worse, especially around the world. I think it's probably going to be a bigger issue outside of the United States than necessarily in the United States. All right. Lumberjack landlord, you look. What? You guys are weird. All right. Hi, Yui. Do you think we are screw up? Do you think we are screw up? No. I th- no. I don't think there's anybody or anything or any situation in which that is screwed up to the point that you can't do something about it. Right? I mean, there's no situation and no anything that can't be dealt with as something with something. Like I remember somebody had told me one time, it was like, "Oh man, that house can't be fixed. You got to tear it down." And I'm like, "Well, that's kind of wrong. Like you can fix anything. It's like how much work do you want to put into it? But you can fix anything. I mean, it's just some things are just like not worth it to you and your time, but it can be done. All right, Hannibal Lecter comment. Let's see here. Do you think the injections are a bioweapon? I don't know. I don't play into conspiracy theories or anything like that. Like I have my opinion on the pandemic. Okay. Right now, what we have is an environment, as far as the economy goes, that would never have existed if it wasn't for the fact that the Federal Reserve and the Treasury had set up special purpose vehicles to bail out every corner of the financial market. Now, that bailing out of the entire financial market could not have happened if it wasn't for the pandemic. Straight up. Part of that was bailing out those corporations. So, if it wasn't for the pandemic, I don't know exactly what the Federal Reserve would have done, but we were heading into a full on economic crisis. Like, we were going to go down. But then we got hit with the pandemic, and they told everybody to go home and don't go to work and don't make your house payment and don't do all this stuff that would be participating in the economy. And here, let's cover up a bunch more stuff by handing you stimulus checks. So, that right there, the pandemic, was pretty much a setup so that the Federal Reserve could bail out the monetary system. I mean, that's because that's what happened with it. If they didn't have the pandemic, we would have failed. So, like, a lot of people said, okay, well, all this stuff needed to happen because of the pandemic. Well, no, it all needed to happen because the whole system was going to crash if it didn't. So, in my opinion, thank God the Federal Reserve had the pandemic so that they could bail out this whole economy, right? Now, I'm not saying like, thank God because they're, lucky for us that they did it, but in the Fed's eyes, that's what they're saying. Thank God we had this pandemic because we would never have had the excuse to bail out the economy otherwise, and we would have crashed miserably. So as far as the jab goes, I think that was just like a neutralizer. Oh, hey, okay, pandemic's over. Here, get shot up. Everybody's healthy now. Go back to work. That's what I think about that stuff because it didn't work. Like the injections didn't work. Everybody I know who got vaccinated got sick. Like I got sick with COVID, right? And everybody else I know got sick with COVID. And every single person I know got jabs. And like some of them got sick twice. It was just like, that shit didn't work. And then people will come, oh, but people will get less sick if they took the whatever. You got less sick. I don't believe that. Clearly planned, yes, absolutely it was. And like I'm totally cool with saying it now. I wouldn't say it back in the day because they would cut your channel and kick you out for even mentioning vaccinations or COVID or anything else on your channel. You would totally get flagged and booted. So, but now it's pretty obvious to everybody. I mean, when when people were like, you're the problem because you're, whatever, you're not participating, you're going to cause everybody to get sick, and then everybody gets sick anyway. It was just like, I don't need to hear it anymore. What do you think of Rumble? Yeah, as far as using the platform Rumble, I would do it. It's just that I just don't have the time to mess around on more platforms. I don't know. Maybe I can get my assistant to help me out a little bit with some of that stuff, but for the most part, like I just have a hard enough time trying to just stay up to date on YouTube and stay, on the comments. I'm just trying to stay active there. I would love to be on Twitter more, or even like some of the other ones, Odyssey and stuff like that. Excuse me, but I just don't really have the time to go and hang out there. So it'd be just like posting videos. I guess I could, but it really wouldn't be me being there. Rumble is the next big thing. Are you a socialist? Absolutely not. I'm not a socialist. I'm not a socialist. I am a constitutionalist. Right? And I'm a constitutionalist who is also a realist. So I have my own personal beliefs. I have my personal freedoms that I try to protect. I have my way of life that I want to live. Right? Now, when it comes to everything else out there, I'm not trying to force my way of life on anybody else. Right? So I believe in Constitution. I believe in a free republic, democratic republic, whatever you want to call, like what it is we have going on is not what I would want for a government. Right. So like I keep a copy of the Constitution on my desk. I'm one of the few people that I know who actually knows the Bill of Rights. I study this stuff like I don't, not like I used to, but there was a time when I studied it, deeply. Like I had a very strong constitutional belief, and I still do, right? But I don't try to enforce that or project it onto anybody else out there because, to be honest with you, politics don't give a shit. They don't care about your constitutional rights. The only person who does care about your rights is you. That's it. You're the only one. All right. And so at the time that your rights are being infringed, if you can't protect them, you don't have them. Straight up. You just don't have rights if you don't know what they are at the time that they're being infringed upon. So that's really what it comes down to. Is just like I'm not a socialist. I'm not like a Republican or Democrat or any of those other things out there. I mean, if anything, I would like to think of myself as a libertarian, but I'm not even that. Right? I'm not a libertarian either. I'm just a guy. I'm just me. And you know, I think that if everybody understood the Constitution a little better, or at least memorize the Bill of Rights, they would just simply, like, a lot of things just wouldn't happen in this country. People would not be behaving the way they do. It would They wouldn't be voting for the people that they do. There's just a lot of changes that would happen, and I think that would be a major difference within our whole society if our schools actually taught the Constitution. Not just like, hey, here's your the preamble and here's the Bill of Rights. Okay, move on to the next thing. That's it. I mean, they don't go into any kind of discussion about what it is to have personal freedoms and to defend those personal freedoms against a higher authority, and to understand that you are the highest authority and that you don't stand under anything, right? And so therefore, when people ask you, do you understand? You say, no, I don't. I don't stand under you, right? I'm the highest authority there is. Nobody walks around with that kind of attitude, because nobody knows. Money creation is one reason dollar is weaker. Okay. Article 1, Section 10. Only gold and silver is money. Yeah, that's right. Article 1, Section 10 of the United States Constitution says that no state shall coin anything but gold and silver as a legal tender and payment of debt. Right? So all our money, everything that we have going on, all the politicians who are voting for budgets and stuff like that, it's all illegal. It's all unconstitutional, every bit of it. If they vote for this, they voted for this budget, unconstitutional. Should be fired immediately. Get out of here. Right? But they don't. All of them do it. So every single person up there who is a politician, a government official, whatever, they should all be fired. Every last one of them. But, yeah, whatever. We'll vote for more. Question, why the dollar is getting weaker now? Comparatively to what? Last year? Or the last couple of months, or the last month, really? I mean, it's at, what's the dollar index at, 106, 105 or something like that? I mean, it was in the 90s last year. So the dollar is much stronger than it was last year if you're comparing it to a basket of world currencies. Now, we already discussed what's going on here in the United States. I mean, I can talk about the felt and the lumber and the siding and the windows and all that other stuff again. But when you look out at the world and you look at how much dollar-denominated debt has been written, it's crazy to think about how much demand for dollars there is. In fact, it would lead me to believe that if all the dollars that are due came due at the exact same time, like all those contracts, all the stuff that's going on outside of the United States, if those things started to come due, I don't think the Federal Reserve could even print at a pace that's fast enough to pay that off. Like, it's not even possible for them to do it. There is no way that the dollar is going to do anything but get stronger. There is no scenario in which that I don't see the dollar getting stronger from here. Right? And yeah, we are going to see times in which that it does get weaker from 110 down to 105 or maybe even less than that. But in the end, you're going to see it much higher than this. It's going to go much higher. And the reason is that either way, if people want to get out of the dollar or they want to get into the dollar, either way, it's going to strengthen the dollar. Right? Because if they want to get out of the dollar, the first thing they have to do is they have to get out of all those contracts that have been written in dollars. That means that there is a demand for dollars that's going to take place. As they start paying off those contracts themselves get used as dollars. That'll be dollars disappearing. Every time they pay off those contracts, that is dollars disappearing from the system, and that'll be more demand for dollars from that. Like, there's no way. If they decide that they do want to keep the dollar, then there's going to be demand for dollars. No matter what, there's going to be a demand for dollars. Now, if it does get to a point where they do want to abandon the dollar altogether, getting out of the dollar will cause the dollar to strengthen. It'll shoot up higher than you have ever seen it before the eventual abandonment. And that's when all the dollars will fly back to the United States and we'll see the hyperinflation scenario. That whole thing doesn't even look like it's even in the distant future. Like, I cannot see that situation at all from anything that I have studied. Okay? So, yeah, there is the BRICS nations. There are nations out there that are trying to do their oil deals and their own sovereign currencies and all that other stuff. Yeah, that's happening. That stuff is taking place, no doubt about it. Compare that to the amount of trade that's being done with the dollar, and it is just a tiny little fraction of the amount. The dollar there's nothing that even remotely comes close to what the dollar is doing. So, yeah, the dollar is going to show weak signs. I mean, especially after the inflation scenario that we had gone through and the inflation expectation was running as high as it was. Yeah, you're going to see the dollar weaken because of that. People's behaviors just in general cause the dollar to weaken on account of that. But just look at it compared to the rest of the world. Right? They want dollars. There is nobody else. There is no other currency out there that they want other than dollars, except for this little pockets of like conformity amongst those who are like wanting to play outside of the dollar game, but they're the only ones. You know, the dollar is a giant octopus with its tentacles and everything. It really is, you know. And I'm not trying to say the dollar will eventually fail. Like, don't get me wrong, it will fail, and it will cease to be the world reserve currency at some point in the future. I just couldn't tell you when that's going to happen because I don't see it. I don't see it yet. It will happen though. How far can housing drop when wages are up and unemployment is fine? Mortgage rates are high, but house prices aren't tanking like some people think. Fed pivots late 2023 or 2023. Home values go back up, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of that. Like, a lot of what people were anticipating, and I was too. Like, I mean, even after the forbearance, I said once the forbearance ends, there's going to be a wave of foreclosures coming on, but we didn't see it. Why? Because people refinanced their homes, right? They refinanced it into a better interest rate, or they just simply sold it. Like, they sold it for a profit. Like, they didn't even have to make payments. They didn't go to work. They didn't make payments. They didn't do anything, and then they sold the house for a profit. Like, it was a total win for them. So I don't see where the wave of foreclosures is coming in. Like, not yet. I mean, I see it coming possibly from an unemployment rise. But that's so far off right now, it isn't happening. And then with the fact that you have less home builders, the home builder sentiment is so low right now, or I mean, it's turning down so bad right now that they're not necessarily encouraged to go out there and build homes. So I just don't see where the rise in inventory and the huge foreclosures and the major crash is coming from. Like, I want to see it. Like I said earlier, I mean, I want to jump into the real estate game, and I would love to be able to buy in at that, those cheaper prices, but I can't. I don't see it yet. Average home in my area, 525. Powell said last Wednesday. Dude, you are catching on. Yeah, thanks, man. Still won't have to pay for their student loans. I am in disagreement with that. Everybody, like, you can see it. They're trying. I mean, they might still get away with it, but I don't see the student loans. I think this is a carrot dangling out there to encourage more kids to take out debts to go to school. Like, that's what I think. Otherwise, they would get discouraged. They would get to a point where they're like, I saw my parents go through this, and my uncles or whatever, my aunts, they went and did the student loan thing, and it's really killing them, and I'm not going to go that route. But if you can have the government come out there and say, hey, we're going to take care of these student loans debts. Don't worry about taking out debt. You're going to be fine. We're going to totally take care of you in the future. Look at what we're doing for these guys. So go ahead, take on that debt. You'll be fine. So I think that's probably more of what's happening here, is to try and, establish more of a credible threat to keep kids encouraged to continue onward with it, with taking out those student loan debts. But as far as like the actual relieving of that debt, that's going to be a really difficult task. The government doesn't really have a position in which that they could just like make these things disappear. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you have heard me talk about this. These student loans are actually put into a security called a student loan asset-backed security, SLABs, which I just love the name of these things. So anyway, these student loan asset-backed security, these slabs, they sit on the government's, the United States government's balance sheets, right? So the government's balance sheet, it has assets and liabilities like anybody's balance sheet does. These slabs are part of the assets. Now, of the government's assets, they have a financial portion of that balance sheet, right? So they got all these assets within their balance sheet. Inside those assets, there's a small or a section of it that's the financial portion of it. Of those financial portion of their balance sheet, all the bonds and stocks and whatever stuff that they hold, half of that, like over half of that, is student loan asset-backed securities, these slabs, right? So it's a huge chunk of the government's assets. And now you think about it, you got assets and liabilities, just like anybody else, assets and liabilities, right? If your liabilities exceed your assets, then your credit rating goes down. Well, if they have these assets and liabilities, and all of a sudden they take the assets, these student loan and asset-backed securities, and they make them disappear, now their liabilities are a lot more than their assets, the credit rating goes to shit. So they can't necessarily just make them disappear, right? They can buy buy them off, use taxpayer money, do something like that, but they can't just make them just disappear. It doesn't work like that. They can't do it that way either. And that's probably one of the reasons why they're having such a hell of a time right now. You look like a young Brad Pitt. Oh, thank you. Still not being paid. 3 years now. Ooh, that's tough. Did I miss a super chat? I'm sorry. Let me go back up and look. Yes, I did. Thank you so much, All Nighter, for calling that out. Thomas Crown, $2. Thank you so much. Can the Fed fight inflation with negative rates? No, they can't. Yes, in a sense that you can do some short-term stimulus that'll make it appear that you're fighting inflation, but in the end, you can't because low interest rates or even negative interest rates are actually a disinflation or a deflationary effect. I think I related a lot to thinking about it like back in the early 80s when interest rates were a lot higher and what that did for the economy. Now, when you have interest rates at like 15% on a US 10-year treasury, let's just say use that for an example, and you inherited $1 million in the early 80s from, your family or whatever. You took that $1 million and you lent it to the US government for 10 years, you would get back a return of like $150,000 a year. That's a pretty good return for just lending the government your $1 million. So with $150,000 a year, that's a lot of money to buy houses and cars and go on vacation and live, especially in the early 80s. That was a pretty decent wage. So 15% interest on a US 10-year treasury was very good for the economy. It was a return on capital investment. And that's what Dr. Lacey Hunt talks a lot about. And so this return on capital investment, when interest rates are higher, although it takes time for that to get into the economy because you have to, invest the money, wait for the return, and then once you get the return, you can start moving that into the economy and start buying things. That is a much healthier, stronger economy that comes from that, from those higher interest rates. When you have low interest rates or even negative interest rates, what you have is a low return on capital investment, or even worse, a negative return on capital investment. So as you put your money towards the government today, well, today's a little bit better than it was just, last year or the year before. But even if you were to put your money towards the government today, you're going to get for 10 years, $1 million is going to get you something like what, $36,000 or so, $36,000 a year. I mean, that's a lot of money, but not like $150,000 a year is a lot of money. And $36,000 a year really doesn't even give you like a decent living wage, for $1 million investment. That's kind of junk, So then you think about it on that sense too. It's just like, well, it's also over 10 years, and the $36,000 that I get a year, the purchasing power from that is actually going down because I can't purchase as much every year with this stuff. So my return is actually starting to go negative. Like my purchasing power is going negative. So no, low and even negative interest rates are actually going to be a deflationary effect to the economy, and in the end from it. But you'll be able to use stimulus during that time, because if you can drop interest rates, then you can borrow a bunch of money and then hand that out to the people, and then they go and spend that into the economy, and everybody starts singing Kumbaya because they see all this money getting spent. Ultimately, it's getting spent on beers instead of saws. So this is the other analogy. Like if the government was to borrow that money and buy into saws, then you would have production. You would work those saws for a while. Once you made some products with the saw, you sell the products, and then you eventually pay for the loan that you used to buy the saw. And now all the work you're doing is for profit. You can buy anything you want. You can buy as much beer as you want. But if you went and bought a bunch of beer with this money, well, you can consume the beer, and that would be pretty good for the economy. And a lot of money goes into beer, agriculture, distribution, advertising, entertainment, all kinds of stuff happens with it. But once the consumption of the beer is gone, now what do you have to do? Well, you have to work with the hangover to pay for that past consumption that you did. And that's really where the problem with having low neutral or low interest rates and then stimulating the economy with it is that everybody starts getting drunk on beer. But if you have higher rates and you start investing towards saws, then everybody works real hard. It takes time, but eventually you'll have production taking place. And so that's the major difference that is happening. Everybody is getting drunk all the time. which is used to be a lot of fun for me. I don't get drunk anymore. It's been a long time, almost 8 years now since I've drank. All right, what time is it? Let's see, an hour 34 into this. All right, the student loan debt gets forgiven. More people would qualify for mortgage debt-based system, whatever. And I'm okay. Did you not hear the part that I said? Like, I mean, what are you gonna do? Like, you relieve the debt to this person right here, right? And they're like, yeah, woohoo! I didn't have to take any responsibility for what I do. I'm gonna go off there and screw my life up some more. All right, so that's what ends up happening from it because you got to be responsible with your debts. I mean, nobody relieved my debts from me, right? I had $25,000 worth of debts that didn't have anything to do with student loans. Nobody came to save me. I had to pay all that off, right? So I benefited from that because then I learned how it is that I'm supposed to save my money and deal with things properly, right? If you take that away from people, then like I mean, just the moral consequences that come from it. But outside of that, the government can't do it. Like, what are they going to do? They have to either charge the taxpayers for it or relieve it somehow. You can't just make them vanish like that. So, how do you do it? I mean, yeah, the idea behind it is just like, yeah, if you take the student loan burden away from this person, they could go over and make a purchase over here. Well, okay, that's a great plan, but nobody did that for me, right? And there's a lot of other people that they could do that for. I mean, why don't you just take away all the credit card debt from people, and then they'd have all the money in the world that they could go out there and buy a house, right? I mean, it's the same thing, but it doesn't, morally that doesn't work. The government would churn tens to hundreds. Yeah, no one understands what fungible means. Okay, um, what to be able to be sold, moved, changed. Hey, UE, market has been rallying at the sign of any good news. Good CPI, dovish, J. Powell. A few days ago, the market wants to rip. What scenario do you see to crash the market before the next bull run? Um, I think people, it's, I think people are a little bit confused on that. The markets love to buy on good news, right? So they buy the rumor and you sell the fact. And Powell comes out and he says, hey, we're not going to be as aggressive, or we're going to, maybe slow down on purchases or something like that. They make some kind of statement that says, hey, we're not going to be nearly as aggressive as we once were. And the markets love this idea. They rally off of the news. They just eat it up because they just want anything at all that is different from what they have had. And if there's any kind of change in the news, then they take that for the direction that it's going. So if the news was, hey, we need to take our 3/4 of a percentage point up to 1%, then the markets would have dumped out. But we took our 3/4 of a percentage point down to a 0.5 percentage point, and the markets love it because it's the direction of that move, right? It wasn't becoming more aggressive, it was becoming less aggressive, but it's still aggressive. So since it's less aggressive, that's good. And the markets just love that and they eat it up. Now, when we get all the way to the time that they actually lift the interest rates, then they lift the interest rates and the markets hate that idea. Now, they knew it was coming. They liked it back before it actually happened. But by the time it actually gets there, then the markets get pissed and then they start selling off because, well, the Federal Reserve is lifting interest rates like they said they were going to do. Yeah. All right. Debt is the American way. Well, it certainly seems to be that way now. All right. Cool. Got a bunch of you up in here. 344. Right on. All right. Norwell Taco. That's your debt, not mine. Bottom line. All right. Not only does it not work morally, it doesn't teach one how to manage debt responsibly. Failure is more instructive than success. Absolutely, it is. If you just get bailed out, you gain no knowledge. That is so true. I mean, that is absolutely true. In fact, I was telling my wife the other day, it was just like, if you're going to fail, fail miserably, like fail bad, fail really good so that you can get all the failure out of it and understand how it is that you failed. That way, when you do learn, you learn from that failure. I mean, failure is there is no better lesson than failure. Like, that's it. The teacher of Everything is failure. Like that's how you do it. You try it, you don't succeed, you keep trying, you don't succeed, you keep trying, then one day you succeed. And hey, like there's all these failing times that I had done it that got me to the point that I actually succeeded. And then understanding why you failed. Like keying in on it. It's just like, man, I totally understand how it is that I failed. I get it, man. That only occurs if it happens. All right, that's how you gain responsibility. Yes. Silver has been doing well. Is silver an indicator like lumber? I don't think so. Only because I think silver is just such a manipulated market with the paper silver derivatives and better than 100, 150 ounces of paper for every 1 ounce of physical that's out there. I just don't look at the silver market in the same way that I look at the lumber market. Now, there was a time that I did really focus in, like hyper focus in on silver, but I kind of lost my taste for like silver rallies and like making a bunch of money off of like a silver move or something like that. I I got caught up with the Max Kaiser crash JP Morgan buy silver campaign where we were going to run silver up to $500 an ounce, and that was going to crash JP Morgan because they had this huge silver short position going on. Kind of a lot like the GameStop story that was taking place. Anyhow, so I was buying silver. I was buying a lot of physical silver, and we were gonna, Giabo, global insurrection against banker occupation. I was running with Max Kaiser, gonna go do this, and it ran up to $50 an ounce, and then it peaked and it started trickling down, and I didn't sell any, and it went all the way down into the teens, and I didn't sell a single ounce of silver, but I did find that Max Kaiser had been selling silver with his face on it, so I actually have a 10th ounce little coin with his face on it. But when I saw all that stuff, I'm like, I'm not going to play this silver game like that anymore. It's an insurance policy for me, and that's all it'll ever be. If it does, I mean, I shouldn't say that's all it'll ever be. If it does run up to $500 an ounce, yeah, I'll be selling me some silver. But I don't anticipate that. And really, the only reason why I even have silver is so I have something that's outside of that third party claim. I don't have to worry about a phone call or an envelope or an app or anything else like that. What I have is in my hand. It's for me to protect. It's my way of sleeping at night, right? So it's my insurance policy. And if you wanted to make a bunch of money off of silver, I would think like the silver miners, like somebody who's into mining or in some sort of processing like that. The actual physical possession of silver, although is by far, in my opinion, the best way to have it, it's not exactly the easiest thing to deal with. You have to have a network of people, whether it be like stores that you can go to or people that that are willing to give you some money for the silver. And most of the time, you're gonna have a hard time selling it for spot price or even buying it for spot price. Usually, you have to pay way over or you sell it for way under. And that doesn't work out very well for people who are trying to protect themselves from inflation, right? Because that's what a lot of people were buying silver for, was to protect themselves from inflation, and it didn't work at all. And I never suggested that. I never said to protect yourself from inflation by buying silver. I said you buy it for an insurance policy so you have something, in your hand that you can, have away from that third party. But that was it. That was the only reason why I suggested it. Even when I had some of the silver guys, they invited me on to speak on their channel to for an interview. I called them out on it. I said, stop pumping this stuff up like that. Stop scaring the shit out of people to try and buy your product. That isn't right. You shouldn't be doing that stuff. Um, I'm surprised they actually aired that too. I gave it to them. I was like, man, you guys are cool for not editing that part out. But I mean, it was my true opinion on it, and they took it for what it was. I mean, but they kept pumping the silver up for everybody to buy. Anyway, moving on. I can't feel my face. Yeah, right now I'm starting to mumble a little bit. Simon, have you read The Great Reset? No, I haven't. I haven't read The Great Reset, and I mean, outside of like, I mean, I understand that, a lot of these people are telling us the plan before they actually do it and stuff. Almost everything that I have learned, that I have figured out, the stuff that I come out here and I talk about, are things that I have observed like ahead of time. Like it was just like some, like how can I give an example of it? Um, like I knew the idea of a central bank digital currency, right? But could not find anywhere where central banks were talking about it. Couldn't, anything. Like they had, there was like, it was crickets out there. And so it's really difficult to try and come up with like, here's the monetary policies that's going to incorporate central bank digital currency into it if you don't have the central bankers talking about it. Like that is very difficult. So you have like all these people who have these opinions on central bank digital currency and how it's going to get incorporated into the monetary policies, right? But they're not the bankers themselves. So you could take that information and then regurgitate that, or you can find where the information is coming from the bankers themselves. And that's really what I've tried to do for almost everything out there, is that if there's a central bank digital currency coming to the system, then I need to find it where the Fed is saying it. Like I can hear all these other people saying it and they have some great information about it, but where is it here that's being said? Because that's really what it comes down to. And and I try to do that with everything. Like, so the first time I heard about the central bank digital currency came from the IMF, and they referred to it as an e-currency, electronic currencies. They didn't even use, like, there wasn't digital currency or nothing in their statements. They were referring to it as e-money. In fact, I think they called it e-money. And and so they knew about this, and this was years ago, before anybody was talking about central bank digital currencies, right? But I had heard about it, that this was like, there was going to be a banking currency or whatever that was going to be locked into the computers like a Bitcoin. And I couldn't find anywhere until I had found that statement. Once I had found that coming from the IMF, then the talking started coming out from the central bank digital currencies from the central banks themselves. And I was like, man, that's it. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, like you hear all these rumors and possibilities and stuff. And if you do hear them, then go find the official documents for it, like, where they are actually going to do that. So this great reset, yeah, I believe it. I believe it's happening. I think the great reset is going, in my personal belief, is that it's going to come down to a tokenizing of everything on the entire world, from all the commodities to your labor to, the house you live in. Everything is going to get tokenized, and it's going to end up on the blockchain at some point, like the digital ledger systems. How they get there, I don't know. Now that part to me is like where the conspiracies really start to play out, because there is all kinds of ideas on how it is that they are going to force this system onto the people, whether it's through war or manipulation of like lockdown type of stuff that's going in China. Who knows what that's going to take place. So as far as the great reset, yeah, I believe it. It's going to happen. It's going to be it's taking everything to tokenizing digital platform. But everything else in between, I think, is just imagination. Great awakening is the other side, and this is more of a God moment. Yeah. Good evening from Salem, Oregon this weekend. Hey, right on, Clots of Coin. Oh, that's right. You're out there in Salem. That's my coin guy. Clots of Coin. Lynette Zhang has documents on CBDC. Okay. Now I'm going to talk to Lynette. I'll message her tonight, and I will have her onto the show and explain to me how it is that the central bank themselves have talked about how they're going to incorporate, not the central bank digital currencies, because we already know about that part of it, but XRP. So I'm going to see. I'll get Lynette on here because we're friends, and I will ask her to explain that part to me, and if she has any information on XRP. All right, Joshua, thank you so much for the 1999. How will current debts be paid back if the U.S. switched to a central bank digital currency, mortgages? It would just get paid back the same way, just like anything else. In fact, most people probably won't even notice that there was a change. Like, people will, like, they will be using central bank digital currencies, and somebody will say, "Hey, man, that central bank digital currencies," and they'll look down at their card and go, "What?" Like that will happen, right? Because people won't understand or even know that there was a shift that even took place. XRP isn't an Urban Dictionary term. Look it up. I'm not saying it's an I'm not saying it doesn't exist, right? I'm not saying that it isn't being used. I'm not saying that it isn't going to be the one that is going to be used. I'm not saying any of that stuff. What I'm trying to say is that I don't have any documents coming from the Federal Reserve saying they're going to use XRP. That's what I'm trying to say. So send me that. I got an email, uneducatedeconomist@gmail.com. Send me the Federal Reserve document talking about how they're using XRP. I would love to see that. Like I'm trying. Like I'm trying to find that document. You know. Dogecoin has a girlfriend. Her name is Doge GF Endgame Master Plan. Okay. Get your game on ready for the collapse of all markets. I just made a big batch of English toffees, some pecan topped, some smoked almond topped, and some with peanuts. Dang, now that sounds like good times right there. All right, UE for president. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think I would really want to be president. Like, I wouldn't want. I wouldn't want to do it. It's like, I mean, I would get in there and, you hear about like, when Trump was like draining the swamp and stuff like that, man, you ain't seen nothing. You didn't see nothing. To what I would do. But then again, like, you wouldn't want me as president because this whole thing would not end up being the same thing as it was, and you're not ready to deal with a crash and rebuild from destruction. So UE for Fed chairman. Now that sounds like fun. I would do that. I would take over Jerome Powell's spot. I would love to come out and talk for the FOMC. God, that would be great. President, worst job ever. I agree. Like, who would want to fly a crashing plane? All right. If our country is hit by EMP, how does one access their accounts? I don't know. Good thing I have silver tokens, silver coins. All right. Is crypto going up in 2023? Who is this with all this hearts and extinct? Is that a damn scammer right there? Is crypto's going up in 2023? I don't know. Probably at some point. I mean, they've been down for quite a while. I would not anticipate any kind of good crypto Bitcoin move until after the Fed actually does a pivot. Damn it, I'm going to get rid of this. Hold on. Who is this person? I got to get rid of him. Ideas. Until after the Federal Reserve actually does their pivot. And that's going to be sometime after the 2% inflation target has been achieved. Sometime after that, the Federal Reserve will eventually drop the Fed funds rate. Until that happens, I wouldn't be excited about any kind of cryptocurrencies. People are going to be more concerned about being in the dollar positions and getting out of their riskier, like, not as liquid assets. So things like Bitcoin and stocks and, some of the more obscure stuff out there, they're not going to do very well during this environment. But the moment that changes and then the Federal Reserve starts to drop interest rate and the whole buy-in is on again and people start borrowing money and great deals, then you could probably see the Bitcoin rally start to happen again after that. But what you find is like cryptocurrencies have a tendency to do really well when like everybody is in like euphoria. Like, this is like, man, there's all this money rolling everywhere and everybody's really happy and everybody's building and everybody's buying and everybody's doing all this stuff. Then Bitcoin does really well during that time. But the moment that people get concerned and they start to need that cash or they're wanting more of a cash position, they dump out of the cryptocurrencies right away because it's just such an obscure market to be in. And nobody really knows, like, where it's going to go and what it's going to do. So they would rather be in cash than to be in something risky like cryptocurrencies. I mean, even gold holds, at least a position of safety. It's just like, man, I'm fearful of the dollar. I'm fearful of these other countries. I'm fearful of crypto. There's really no other place to go to than gold. I mean, gold is it. Gold and land, I mean, those are the two. But then even on land, you have to trust your government that they're going to be able to, enforce the ownership laws. So really there's nothing left after that than except for gold, right? And gold would be it. All right, moving on. Oh, there we go. Dogecoin has a girlfriend. You guys keep talking about this. Let's see. I think when the Fed lowers to 50 basis points, the market's gonna run up. Manarito told me so. When the Fed lowers to 50-point increases, the market's going to run up because that's better than what we have been experiencing. Like, I mean, I don't get that. I don't see the markets running. Like, I see some rallies happening, but I don't see, like, I see bear markets rallies happening where you see days or even like a week of which that the market runs incredibly high. Like, people are like, man, this is like one of the best moves I've ever seen. But you'll find that taking place in a bear market, like in a very longer trend bear market, you happen. And when these rallies take place, people get, they get convinced that, this is going to continue on forever. Like this is the new normal or something like that, or it's time. But it's not. It's just like, people are, again, stuck in hopium, thinking that things are changed or it's going to get better. Here's something else. Nobody really understands an environment or an economy that had ever increasing interest rates to it. Like, or interest rates that remained elevated. Since the early 80s, dropping of interest rates has been the go-to for any economic downturn. Eventually, we ran into the zero bound, the lower bound is zero. And dropping of interest rates was no longer an effective tool for the Federal Reserve. So now what? Well, if you can't go negative because you don't have the central bank digital currency and you still have cash in the system and you can't go negative, then what do? Well, you're going to have to inflict some pain on the people and start raising them interest rates to try and get your ammo back. And then you have to keep them elevated for, a significant amount of time in order to get the average 2% inflation. Because if you dropped interest rates right away, it wouldn't work. It would just basically, you would end up right back in the same failed position that you were in before. And this time you wouldn't have an excuse of inflation to fight. So yeah, it's going to be a long road here on this one as far as interest rates remaining elevated and not stimulating the markets by the dropping of interest rates, encouraging people to go out there and participate in that. So, super chat from Joshua. Okay, did I miss it up there? Let me go up and look. Thank you. All-nighter, you're the man, man. Thank you for catching those. Where's it at up here? Oop. Thank you very much, Joshua, for the 1999. Thank you, All-nighter, for reminding me of that. I think I got this one, though, didn't I? How will current debts be paid back at the U.S. switch to a central bank digital currency? Yeah, it would be the same. Yeah, I caught that one, brother. But oh wait, there is another one. Here we go. Mr. Pink, thank you so much for the $10. Doge GF is listed on Coinbase. That should perk your ears. Upcoming from Mr. Pink. What is? Okay. So I mean, there's a million altcoins out there, and I mean, I bought a few of them just so I'd, have some or whatever, but like, I don't look at any of these one as being better than the other. So what has Doge GF got over Doge, All right, don't pick up any bag ladies. Why not? All right. All right, good job, Mr. Pink. All right. It's a scammer troll. Oh. It's just a pump scheme for a quick buck. Okay. Yui, if you were to grow food, what crops would you grow? You recommend growing food and learning to can. Which vegetables or fruits do you recommend? Um, well, personally, like you kind of have to just figure out what it is that you like doing for yourself. Now, like when it came to our garden, we liked to grow a lot of the stuff that we consumed. We didn't really can out of our own garden. The stuff that we ended up canning, we usually got from somebody who like grew an abundance of something and then we traded for it. So I had a huge apple tree, so that was the big thing that we traded a lot for. So we would trade apples for a lot of other stuff. And then out of the garden itself, my wife, she really liked growing beets, but not for the beets themselves, but for the beet greens that come off of it. And so she would have a patch of beets that she would just literally like pick a leaf off of every one of these little plants, and I guess meticulous, but she would build salads for everybody every day by just picking little tiny leaves off of each one of these little beet plants that she would have. So that was like one thing that she had going on. Um, Acorn squash. For some reason, we just really love growing and eating acorn squash, so we grew a lot of that. And onions. I had a nice big onion patch that I would, for some reason, I liked growing the onions. What else? We did all kinds of stuff, but like I said, most of it we didn't. We would just consume right out of the garden as it was growing, and the stuff that we canned, we traded for. We traded for those abundance items. The Pacific Northwest is full of abundance of all kinds of stuff. So, it wasn't uncommon to, for somebody to bring you like a whole salmon, or, maybe bring you some like elk steaks or something like that, and you would trade it for, say chickens. I used to raise chickens too. That was the other thing. I would raise meat birds. But as far as the garden, that's how we kind of did it, is that we grew the garden and ate right out of the garden for the most part until the winter time. And even then we still had some winter crops that we would grow, and still continue, like, to be able to harvest, stuff out of it. And that's how we kind of did things. So but canning is definitely a skill that everybody should have, and you don't need like a homestead or gardens or anything else like that. You can have the canning equipment and just go to the store and buy the stuff to can. Like if you find chicken on sale, I mean, most people don't want to buy like, 20, 30 pounds of chicken or something like that. But if it's on sale and you can get a really good deal for it, then you can buy it and then spend the weekend canning that up, and then you have like, chicken for months. All right. Man, there's a lot of you up in here today. Well, we're at 288, 253 likes. We've been out here for 2 hours now. I'm going to give it like another, say what, 10, 15 minutes or so. We'll see how things go, and then I'm going to jet out because it's been a while that we've been out here. All right. The problem is that most people have more debt than money. The public cannot handle the pain much longer. The Fed will pivot, and those of us who save will continue to pay. I don't think so. I think that's probably the narrative that a lot of people have, but I think the Federal Reserve is going to keep the interest rates elevated for a significant amount of time, and people are going to feel the pain from that. If you are a saver, your day is coming, right? I mean, it's not going to be awesome, like, like we're all going to make millions of dollars off of our savings. I don't believe that, but I think that the interest rates are going to be up there, that you actually do find places that you can park your cash and get a return like you haven't seen for quite a while. Not like some awesome, hey, we're going to be, this is the best thing that's ever existed, but it's certainly better than you've ever had. And we're starting to find that. Like even now, I was reading an article talking about the surge in the repo facility due to the fact that these money market accounts are just loaded up with cash and they need to find a place to park it. And we knew the Federal Reserve was going to do this. Like, I didn't know exactly how that was going to play out, but when I put out that video those years ago saying, titled "Things Are Changing," I was talking about the repo facility. I didn't know it was going to be a big deal at the time. I just found this article, or this something I think it was in the Federal Reserve's website themselves, talking about this standing repo facility and what it was, and that they really wanted this thing to be part of their like actual toolkit. I didn't know it was going to turn into such a big deal like it did. I mean, the standing repo facility ended up being a really big deal, and You know, it was, and that's what's funny about it is that originally the standing repo facility was like a pressure relief. It was only in case of like, extreme times. Like it wasn't meant to be used as a regular tool. But now it's like it's part of their daily process. It's just like, it's not like this pressure relief or an emergency tool anymore. It's like the average tool, that they use. It's just part of their toolkit. And I found that to be like quite interesting, like because it used to be the way they adjusted the Fed funds rate was more at the banking level. I mean, it is at the banking level that they do it, as far as the big banks and their interbank lending, especially on their overnight lending to each other to make sure that they're balanced out for the next day. But because everything is so flooded and screwed up, and these requirements got dropped to zero and all kinds of stuff, they couldn't set the Fed funds rate there anymore like that. So they moved it over to the interest on excess reserves in the standing repo facility, and this is where they ended up like establishing interest rates. Well, like I said, that was an emergency facility. It was like it wasn't meant to be a standing position there, but now it is, and that's how they conduct their Fed funds rate. So they knew back in 2018 when I put out that video that they needed that standing repo facility because they were going to have a flood of money that they're going to have to deal with. And this is before all the money printer go burst stuff. What is your prediction on WTI next year and why? I don't know. Give me some time to think about that one, and maybe I'll do a video or something. Yeah. What do you pay for a haircut? I pay a lot. I pay a lot of money for a haircut because the girl I get my haircut from does an absolutely amazing job of it. So I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's from Cut and Shave in Astoria. This particular one didn't. This one came from somebody different, but I typically go to Cut and Shave in Astoria. And they are by far the most professional barbers there are in town. And everybody who walks out of that shop looks like $1,000,000. So, yeah, I highly recommend Cut and Shave. Shave and a haircut. Do you believe in the right to arm bears? Yeah, I think all bears should be armed. I mean, I made some big money on USO call options when WTI makes huge swings. See, this is like more of like the investment type of things. Like there's a lot of times that I have made, like I could have made a lot of money in the lumber industry, as far as when I saw the lumber prices moving, I knew that there was going to be huge volatility swings. And there was a lot of people out there. In fact, I had people send me emails saying, "Hey, dude, thanks for your information, man. I made a bunch of money off of your information trading lumber. Thank you." And I thought to myself, it was just like, man, that's cool. I have the information. He used my information to make a bunch of money. I wish I could use my information to make money with. I didn't even know, like, I don't know how to do that. And and that's where, like, I think the mindset of an investor is much different from an economist, right? Like, you we study the same stuff, we look at the same things, we kind of talk about a lot of the same stuff, but the mindset is much different from an investor as opposed to an economist. Like an investor is really like looking towards the way things are going to be or should be or something so that they could take advantage of that. And like the economist is really just kind of day by day, just kind of imagining what it is that's going to happen going into the future and with nothing really set in stone. So like an investor, like they commit. They're like, boom, I'm committing to this. And then like it's like they etched it in stone, right? But an economist won't do that. Most economists will say, hey, for the current situation that we're in right now, these are the predictions that I have, set forth or that are going to happen. But that could change at any given time, right? Now, if an investor was just like, nope, that's it. Once we're done, it's going to go. We got to make this thing happen. So it's a much different mindset there. Hey, DG, thank you so much for the $25. And thank you. Is investing for a profit moral? Absolutely, it is. Absolutely. I have no problems with people investing money for profit. Like that's why you do it. Like why else would you? I mean, that dude over there, he doesn't have anything, but he's got a really good idea. And I like his idea, right? I can help out with that, right? So if I give him some money and he takes that money and rolls with his idea and is able to profit really well with that and then pay me back and profit me as well, and he thanks me because I was able to help him achieve his dream, like that's a symbiotic relationship. That is awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's the tricking people into student loan debts for life that I have a problem with. You know, uh, live from Oregon. It's Saturday Night Live. Just got done work and loving this. Stay grinding, Simon. Hey, thank you. Well, I appreciate you tuning in. Who is? I can hardly read the name. What is it, Seraph96? I get the inclination a lot of people would invest to avoid work, but I get what you say too. Yeah, I mean, if there's ever going to be anything that you invest in, like if you're an investor who's investing and doing well at it, it's because you know what you're doing really well, right? If you understand something in your life, then invest in that. Like invest in what it is that you know. Like I I would invest in lumber because I know lumber, right? And now I do buy one stock. I buy Altria, right? Altria is Marlboro cigarettes and Anheuser-Busch. I don't buy much of it. I buy little pieces, like $50 every so often. I don't know anything about Altria, right? I know they have a fairly decent dividend pay, and I know a little bit about addiction. So I bought into Altria, right? But that's the only reason. I don't have any other real good reason why I started buying that particular stock. And that's the only one that I really gotten into. I do buy ETF, like the total global market ETF and the Russell 500 growth stock or something like that. Did not do very well over the last year. Neither one of those things did. The Altria has done pretty well. I mean, that's like comparatively to the other ones, anyhow. But that's it for investment. Like that's like literally the extent of my investments, you know. And that and cryptocurrencies and some precious metals. Everything else that I invest, like I don't really have. Of course, I've been broke my whole life, so I really haven't had a chance to invest in anything. But out of all the stuff that I see out there, there's really nothing out there that I would be eager to invest in outside of like myself. Like I would love to invest into like maybe pushing the uneducated economist out into speaking engagements and doing bigger things. Like I've already started to do the interviews, and we're going to be doing some more of those, trying to expand the channel into more platform to bigger things, I guess I should say. But that's really what I would want to invest in. It's like I'm going to invest really into myself, into what I can do with the uneducated economist, and maybe try and take it out onto the road and do some speaking engagements. That's what I feel like I'm moving towards. um, Other people might have other businesses that they want to invest towards, or maybe somebody else's business that they got going on. But ultimately, when you're buying stock, you're buying into those companies, those businesses. That's what you're doing. You're actually becoming part of that business by buying their stock. So yeah, that's how I plan on investing going into the future. But the more options that you have, that's the better. So if you can understand the stock market and understand, the different areas to put your money towards, you can do really well. Like everybody, like not everybody, but a lot of people do really well just investing in stocks, just flipping stocks, or you know, picking out the right ones and day trading. All right. Why does it seem so many people have jobs and are out buying things? I make plenty more money than I live on, but I know what is coming and I don't buy much. I don't understand. Can you help explain? To be honest with you, I agree with you. I think about like, I have my wife and we have average jobs, and then I have a really decent side hustle doing YouTube. And I look out there at the people and some of the things that they're buying, like the fancy trucks they buy and the houses that they live in and the things that they're doing. And I'm thinking, where do you get all this money? Like, I have, like, my wife and I, we have the average jobs and we have a side income coming in, and I call bingo and I do other things, right? And it's still like, to me, I don't understand how it is that these people can afford to do the things that they do. It's, it's obviously they can't. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, if I'm looking at myself thinking, okay, I drive a crappy car, I really conserve my money, I really pay attention to what it is going on, and it's still really difficult to try and, like, feel like you're doing really well. It's just like you feel like you're doing okay, but you're at any given time things could change and it could be. But yet I see people out there who, like, look like they just have no cares whatsoever, just driving the fancy car and doing all the crazy things. They simply can't afford to do that. I know they can't, especially now that I'm in the position that I'm in, or at least, have the side income like I do. I look out there and I know these people cannot afford to do what they are doing. Like, unless they maybe have some inheritance or something like that I don't know about. But for the most part, I just feel that everybody's living paycheck to paycheck and incredibly deep in debt. All right. Wages have been going up. Retirees left the workforce and didn't come back. Yeah. All right. It's wise to be invested in as many asset classes as you can be. That's true diversity that will help to protect your wealth and during times of economic turmoil. Yeah, and I agree with that. Like, people would say, "Well, how's your Bitcoin working out for you now that it's crashed?" And I was like, I don't know. I haven't looked at it in a while. It's just a small part of, like, everything else that I have going on. So yeah, it's not that big of a deal. And the same thing with the stock market or the silver market or anything else that's going on out there. If you've been if you have, like, your fingers in all the different pies, it's like it doesn't matter if one of them goes down or even if a couple of them go down. You got these other assets that are still doing quite well. And that's really how you protect yourself from, like, major changes that are ripping through. So, like we're experiencing now, major changes. I'm gonna have to go, guys. I'm starting to mumble. Oh, hey, cool. I got another super chat. Justin, thank you very much for the $10. UE seems like a worthy investment to me. Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and that's what I'm like. I'm putting it in my head now. What it is that I see myself as. Um, I want to be able to for one, I want to be entertaining, right? I mean, that's my ultimate goal, is to at least be able to grab the people's attention and to at least entertain them for an hour or two. That's, like, my ultimate goal in the end. um Spreading good information, that's the other thing, like information that is useful to you, so that you can, conduct yourself in a way that is best for you and yours, right? That's the other goal. Those are my two goals: being entertaining and put out good information. um but I really do see myself, like, on stage speaking. I think that would just be, like, just one of the most amazing things in my life to be able to do, is to travel from, town to town or area to different, meetups or whatever, and do speaking engagements and answer questions or just kind of talk about, different things that we see inside of the economy. I think that would just be such an awesome life to live, to do something like that. And yeah, I'm gonna try. I don't know. I mean, we're gonna try and do some local speaking engagements and see how they go, see what works and what doesn't, and if the crowd is entertained and informed, then we'll start taking it further and see how far we can go with it. Um, yeah, who knows? Who knows what will come from it? But I'm not gonna put anything, like, I'm not gonna, I won't put any limitations on it. The sky will be the limit on it. Like, yeah, let's do it. All right. I met a lady in Vegas tonight. Hooker. She came up to me. All right. Give me $10, Justin. Huh. Bitcoin will be valuable, not going to replace the central banking. Yeah. UE, here we go. Look into USO, as it is much easier to trade than LBR. Oil has big swings trades on news. The call options are insanely profitable when it takes big fear drops like China lockdowns. Good night, Joan. Alrighty. Yeah, I've been out here for 2 hours and 18 minutes, guys. I think it's a little late into the night now. Probably should call it an evening. But it's been so nice hanging out with you guys. You're all very supportive with the super chats. I love answering these questions. I love talking economics. I love the theories that you guys have as well. Everything that you do for the channel has just been amazing, and I cannot thank you guys enough for doing this with me. So, what do we have here? Thanks for hanging out. Yep, absolutely. Thank you guys for being here. I've been all over the planets, Mike. Let's see. Great, thanks. Have a great night. Thanks. All righty. Good night, all-nighter. Good night, Lumberjack Landlord. Good night, RR. You guys are awesome.